Hi, this is NTI 33. This is a trigonometry intro. We're looking at right triangle trig. So for this, we need a right triangle. So this is our right angle. Let me zoom in just a little bit. Okay, when you're doing trig, there are three basic trig functions that we deal with. These are ratios, three trig ratios. They are sine, cosine, and tangent. Now, we typically abbreviate those, and we will do that in just a little bit. Okay, these are ratios. They are ratios of side lengths. When you are, didn't quite leave enough room. When you are doing trig, you have to have a reference angle. So for this, I'm going to let A be my reference angle. So just for now, A is my reference angle. If A is my reference angle, the side opposite of A is referred to as my opposite side. Because it is opposite the reference angle. Okay. And then the hypotenuse, as always, is the side that is opposite the right angle. Excuse me, I'm going to rotate my paper just a minute. Okay, the hypotenuse is opposite the right angle. And then I always do this side last. This is the adjacent side. And it's called adjacent because it is adjacent to the reference angle. It is the side of the reference angle that forms the angle. The reference angle is always going to be one of the two acute angles. The right angle can never be a reference angle. So only your two acute angles can be a reference angle. So the hypotenuse is always going to be a side of your reference angle. Remember, these are called legs. So one of your legs is always going to be a side of your reference angle. So one of the legs will be adjacent, the other leg will be opposite, and then you'll always have your hypotenuse. So you're always going to have opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Sine, by definition, is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine, by definition, is adjacent over hypotenuse. And then tangent, again by definition, is opposite over adjacent. Okay, so this is the definition of sine, cosine, and tangent. They are simply the ratios of sides of your right triangle. Okay, so let's look at what that might look like in a problem. So suppose we have a right triangle. I always like to use red for my right angle. And this time I'm going to use side lengths. Okay. So suppose I want to know what sine, okay, this time I'm going to abbreviate these. Sine is abbreviated S-I-N. Suppose I want to know what sine of A is. Actually, let me switch up and use a different color. Okay, sine of A. A is my reference angle. So, opposite of A is 3. This is my opposite side. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Here's my right angle. My hypotenuse is 5. So sine of A would be 3 over 5. Okay. Cosine of A okay, A is still my reference angle. The side that makes angle A that is not my hypotenuse is this. So this is my adjacent. Abbreviation for adjacent is ADJ. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. My adjacent is 4. My hypotenuse is 5. So cosine of A is 4 over 5. Okay, if I want to know tangent of A, abbreviation for tangent is TAN. And this is what you will see on your calculator. Right now you don't need a calculator though. Okay, tangent is opposite over adjacent. We've got everything labeled right now, okay, but our opposite is 3, our adjacent is 4. So it's 3 over 4. And it's truly that simple, guys. Truly is. All right, now, what if I switch reference angles? Suppose I want sine of B. Remember, reference angle has to be one of the acute angles. C cannot be a reference angle. Cosine of B and tangent of B. Okay, what happens is I have to relabel my sides. B is now my reference angle. So the side opposite B is 4. This is now my opposite side. Hypotenuse is always hypotenuse. This is still my hypotenuse. Okay. The 3 is now my adjacent. This is the side that makes angle B that is not my hypotenuse. Okay, so notice what happens when you change reference angles. Your opposite and adjacent simply switch places. Hypotenuse stays the same. So, sine of B. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So for B, my opposite is 4. So sine of B is 4 over 5. Cosine of B. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Cosine is going to be 3 over 5. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. For angle B, opposite is 4, adjacent is 3. So this is 4 over 3. Okay, that's how you get your trig ratios. This is often on the ACT. You're asked to give your trig ratios. Okay, so that's the basics of trig. If you can label your opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse, and if you can remember this, you've got that licked. Okay, so question is, how can you remember this? There are a couple of different ways. So let's go back up to this. Actually, there we go. We can see that now. Okay, so the classic way to remember this table. Anytime you're doing trig, you want to be able to write some form of this down to help keep it in your head, because you don't really want to be thinking about this while you're trying to solve a problem. So most of the time, if you mention trig, people are going to say to you, oh yeah, SOHCAHTOA. Okay, so SOHCAHTOA, what is that? SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. Okay, so what is that? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. That's the classic way to remember it. I'll be honest, I don't use it. I can't remember how to spell SOHCAHTOA. Doesn't work for me, but that's the classic way. Works for a lot of people. Okay, so SOHCAHTOA, one way to remember your table. On your calculator, okay, you've got sine, cosine, and tangent. That is there all the time. Anytime you see this, it's going to be there in that order. Okay, so for me, what I personally use is I always jot down S, C, T. Okay, so I've got it in that order, S, C, T. And then I have a sentence that I say Oscar had a heap of apples. And that gets the table for me. in abbreviated form. Okay, so again, what was that sentence? Oscar had a heap of apples. Just switch that. Whatever. Y'all know I can't spell, right? Oscar had a heap of apples. Okay, so sine, cosine, tangent, it's always in that order. Oscar had a heap of apples. That gets the table set up for me. Okay, so that one, fairly popular. If you can spell apples, but it doesn't matter. Another way where you don't have to remember this, but I argue you don't have to remember it because you're going to have a calculator, is some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on asphalt. Some people say something else. Okay, that gets you the table. Some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on asphalt. Okay? Guess you can't see that whole table. So that's 3 ways to remember that table. So basically 2 things for you to work on today is can you write this table down? You need to be able to write this table down. So whether you use the traditional SOHCAHTOA, write down SCT and then do Oscar had a heap of apples, or use the some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on asphalt. Okay, be able to write the table down and be able to label your right triangle. So your reference angle is always going to be given to you. You have to be told what your reference angle is, one way or another. We'll talk more about that tomorrow, okay? But once your reference angle is given to you, can you label your opposite side? Can you label your hypotenuse? And can you label your adjacent? That's what you got to get from today's lesson, okay? So, and then once you do that, writing your ratios, that should be easy, okay? So get that down. Tomorrow we'll look at a more formal note sheet, and we will write some more trig ratios and find some side links. So hope y'all are doing great. Hang in there. We got this week, and we are done, guys. Hope y'all are doing well.